The short-handed Maple Leafs put up a better effort against the Blackhawks, but it wasn't enough to end the skid. We'll break it all down here on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leafs centered podcast hosted by myself, David Morassutti. Obviously, Mike DeStefano is not here with me this week. He is on vacation. So you got me here on the Locked On Leafs podcast while he is gone, and I will have some rotating guests while he is away. But today, I wanted to do a solo show with you. I want to thank everybody for making us your daily listen and for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in North America. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and with $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Well, I'm sure some of you have maybe been fading the Leafs in your bets, and if you did, you probably turned that $5 bet into $300 in bonus bets. But this was another loss for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Obviously, a closer game, but still not feeling pretty good considering it is now a 5-game losing streak. They lost 3-2 to the Chicago Blackhawks. And yeah, this is again territory we have not seen with this team in a long time. When you consider everything that's happened this season, it just all seems to be kind of piling up right now. And look, really just a really tough situation the Leafs find themselves in. Like, coming into this game, we knew no Austin Matthews, no Anthony Stolarz, no Chris Tanev. Well, now you had no Brandon Carlo, who was scratched from the game because he was injured. So it's a tough situation right now. You don't have Scott Laughton. Joseph Woll did finally make his return to the net, so that was a positive there. You did get some buys back. And the Leafs recalled Easton Cowan before the game, which meant a total shuffle of the lines, other than the top line of Tavares, Robertson, and Nylander. That stayed together, but the rest of the lineup was just thrown into a blender by Craig Berube. And if you remember, I kind of called for this to happen. I said the Leafs needed to shake things up because what was happening outside of, Tavares and Robertson, Nylander to a degree. We'll get to him a little later in the show. But, they needed something different because it was not working what they were doing. And so you saw a third line. We'll start with the second line. I would say the second line was Nicolas Roy, Matthew Knies, and Easton Cowan. And look, I thought that line played pretty good. Easton Cowan brought some little bit of juice. I felt like he was just snake bitten a little bit in this game. I thought he was actually, a good presence on that line. I thought Nicolas Roy had one of his better games in recent days, considering how things have gone for him lately. We were talking about how he was kind of floundering a bit, and it helps when you're playing with higher quality players, right? Obviously, we don't see Nicolas Roy as a second line center, but I thought he was pretty adequate, winning the faceoffs, doing all those things that he was supposed, we were expecting of him when he came to Toronto. So I thought that second line was pretty good. The third line, Max Domi, Matthias Michelli, and Bobby McMann. I think Bobby McMann was a standout for me. I didn't really think Michelli or Domi really brought that much. I think Domi has really, really struggled lately. They were on the ice for that first goal. There were a lot of things I didn't like about that first goal, considering that Bobby McMann was the only one skating on that play, and everybody else seemed to just be okay with watching, the puck being skated around by one player in the zone, and nobody wants to do anything about it. Passing lane opens up, easy one-timer pass, Joseph Woll. And then the fourth line, Steven Lorentz, Dakota Joshua, and Kelly Yarncroc. Again, it's hard for me to pick on a fourth line. I've kind of felt that, Kelly Yarncroc has had he started off the season so well. He was winning. He was putting up points. He was getting goals, right, and all that stuff. When he's not putting up offense, I just haven't seen what I've needed to see from him personally, right? Supposed to be a good defensive player. Has he really been that good defensively? I personally haven't really seen it from him. I think he's like, if you're looking at a player who's kind of underperformed lately, he's certainly been one of those players. But that was just a complete rejig of the four lines, and obviously on the blue line with Brandon Carlo coming out, Philip Myers drew back in. He was playing mostly with Morgan Riley. He had Benoit McCabe and Dakota Mermis and Oliver Ekman-Larsson. So, again, throwing your lineup in a blender, there's not really much you could really do about that, considering you're down another right-handed shot defense, and 7 left shots were 5 lefties. Oh, I got 7 from 5 lefties were dressed on that blue line with Philip Myers, the only right-handed shot. And we'll go through a move that was made. Troy Stetcher now coming in. Hopefully we'll solve a little bit of that with all these injuries piling up. But look, let's look at kind of this game here. And, I thought the Leafs were initially starting off a little slow. They weren't really building a lot of momentum to really get things going offensively. I thought they were being a little too passive. Then things kind of changed, right? I felt like, they really started to pile on the shots later in the first period. I thought the second half of that first period, I thought they were really good. And look, the one thing they did that they haven't done a lot this season, not only outshoot their opponent in the first period, because we know that's been a struggle for this team, but they had the advantage when it came to the expected goals, right? I know that sometimes we talk about those things, and, is it really as big of a deal as, is made out to be? I think in this game, you certainly saw the Leafs controlling play a lot better. I thought the high danger chances were, just looking at it, were way better for the Leafs. And then you look at the way the game ended, 16-6, the Leafs had an advantage in high danger chances at 5-on-5. If I pull up the power play, or just all situation, 19-9. This was their better effort. It's just, guess what? They couldn't capitalize on some of the chances. Like Easton Cowan had some glorious chances in this one. Bob McMahon had many, many glorious chances too in this game. Like, I thought the result, if you played that game again, I think the Leafs come out in a better position. But at the end of the day, they didn't, right? And I know a lot of you will probably be saying that. I thought, there's obviously a lot left to be desired offensively in this game, but it's also goes to show that when you don't have a guy like Austin Matthews, it makes a difference. But there are also guys on this team that in this game I felt could have been playing a little bit of a higher level. And we'll get to that in the good, bad, and ugly. But, again, I thought there was more positives to be taken from this game than we've seen the last few days. But at the end of the day, guess what? They didn't come away with the win. So unfortunately, we have to do the good, bad, and ugly. We have to go through what didn't work for this Leafs team against the Blackhawks. And we'll also go over the new addition to the team with Troy Stecher coming in, claimed off waivers. And obviously that coincides with David Kampf no longer with the Leafs anymore. So we'll discuss what kind of that all means here next on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hockey season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a total headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where Gametime comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring amazing tickets, fast, easy, and stress-free. And look, if you're looking to find some tickets to Leafs games, I'm sure there's some people that right now that don't want to watch this team. but you can go over to Gametime to grab seats for, obviously the next game with the Leafs and Blues. It couldn't be simpler. You can get seats in minutes. You can see what you're paying for. There are no hidden fees, and you can see what your view looks like before you buy the tickets with their in-app seat view feature. Their zone deals are a game changer. You pick the section, Gametime picks your seats, and you save big. You can even find tickets for great prices, much cheaper than maybe over at Ticketmaster. So take the guesswork out of buying the NHL tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Today's show is also brought to you by Farm to Fork. If you're a fan of locally farmed meats delivered straight to your door, I've got some exciting news. Farm to Fork makes it easier to get high-quality steaks, air-chilled chicken, wild-caught seafood, and more, with no antibiotics, hormones, or GMOs. Plus, everything comes flash frozen and individually packaged for your convenience. All Farm to Fork meats are raised on Canadian farms, so when you order, you're supporting local producers. It's time to buy Canadian, folks. Farm to Fork's meals are top notch. There's some great steaks that, if you like the tender, juicy, and and you can get them nice, perfect cooked. Nothing beats having that quality meat. And their air chicken is air chill, so it's fresher and more flavorful than what you get in the store. They're delivering all across Ontario, Western Quebec, and the best part, delivery is free with a minimum order $199. You don't even have to leave the house to get this quality. I've got a special code for you, LOCKEDON40, to get $40 off your first order at Farm to Fork. Visit farmtoforkdelivery.ca to start stocking up on the best meats around. Again, that's LOCKEDON40 for $40 off your first order. Farm to Fork, deliciously locally farmed meats delivered straight to your door. Welcome back here to the Locked On Leafs podcast. David Morassutti and Mike DeCefo is not here this week. I will have some people appearing with me. We'll make some calls to the bullpen, to Frank. I got a couple of other guys who've said, hey, give me a call. I'm on. So we will, I don't know. Maybe that changes with the way the Leafs have been playing lately. But I think hopefully the vibes will start to change a little bit after this game, because as much as we're doing the good, bad, and the ugly right now, I think it balances a little bit more than what we saw from that Kings game. I'll say that. What we saw with the Kings game, that was gross. Terrible. This game, a lot more positives. So let's go through a couple of the... I want to bring up a couple of the positives. I thought Joseph Woll, let's talk about him. We even talked about his first game of the season. I thought he was pretty good. The chances he did face, I think there was, some tough saves made, and the Leafs, were in a position where they didn't give up as many bad chances in this one, but they were still giving up, chances in front of the net, and he had to be solid. The only one I will say I didn't care for the third goal, the game-winning goal. Just that's a bit of a seeing eye shot, but it was tipped. Right. So, that was a tough one for him to track. But otherwise, I thought he gave them, again, a good chance to win this game. Obviously, it wasn't enough, and that's the unfortunate part. But I thought he looked much better. I'll also say this, though. The other good, I thought, Morgan Rielly, I thought he was had a better performance himself. When he was on the ice, the chances were in the Leafs' favor. I think he had a positive expected goals, which hasn't happened too much for Morgan Rielly this year. So I thought he was pretty good. I thought Oliver Ekman-Larsson again continues. Like, there are some players who are playing up to snuff. It's just once you trickle it down, it hasn't been to the same, in my opinion. But I thought they were pretty good. I thought, again, Easton Cowan played quite a bit in this game, right? With power play time and all that, he played almost 17 minutes in his return. Again, didn't look out of place. Obviously, some times where I felt like he had missed opportunities. And those hopefully will come, that he'll start to score on some of those. But the bad, let's go with the. I was debating whether to go bad or ugly with this. William Nylander. Again, on the ice for 2 goals for, on the ice for 2 goals against. He did not register a single shot on goal. This is the first time since 2019 that Nylander hasn't registered a shot in consecutive games. And this to me is a player right now. Apologies. This is a player to me right now who seems to be struggling with confidence. He might not be saying it, right? When you hear about the other day when you're talking about it's easier to, be better defensively than if you're not scoring and all that. Well, guess what, Willie? You're not shooting the puck. When you're not shooting the puck, your team's not getting any really big offensive production from you. And they need, with Austin Matthews out, it's William Nylander that has to be the one to step up. You ain't stepping up if you're not shooting the puck. Okay? So he was a player right there that, if you get a little more offense out of Nylander, maybe you come away with the win in this game, right? Again, I don't know what exactly it is. I know Craig Berube had the chat with him on the bench after the Kings game, where after that goal where it looked like he was just just brutal, right? I think again he's trying to play. Berube's trying to play this delicately with Nylander, like he's done ever since he's come to Toronto. But I think Willie needs a bit of a kick in the butt right now, because I don't think it's been good enough from him the last few games, and it's clear and obvious when he hasn't have a shot on goal. The ugly, you had the lead, and then Philip Myers. I don't know what this guy's doing. I don't know what he is doing. He's on the ice for 2 goals against. He's a big player that doesn't play big. He's getting outchanced when he's on the ice. There's just nothing positive. And look, I said on the last show that we can't be singling out one player, and I'm going to try my best not to just make this a dump on Philip Myers, because look, he's not the only one. He is not the only one struggling, but he definitely has not looked NHL caliber, right? There's just no physicality from him. He's a big player that use your reach, do something, and I haven't seen it from him. So I think he's really struggling. Again, Jake McCabe, on the ice for 2 goals against. He's another player that just hasn't been, with all these guys out of the lineup, right? With Tanev out of the lineup, with Carlo out of the lineup. It's Jake McCabe that has to be the steadying presence. He hasn't been. And that's the unfortunate thing right now is he certainly has had his struggles. Like they got to get more out of these guys. And I'm with the moves being made right now, maybe things will change a little bit, but I do think that, if I'm Craig Berube right now, as much as you want to have that lefty righty balance, I don't know if I can have Philip Myers in the lineup for the next game. I don't know how much longer you're going to be able to have Philip Myers on this team at this rate. And unfortunately, there aren't many righty options with the Marlies. There's got to be something better than this. Unfortunately, just have not seen it from Myers. So let's talk about the new player in town. We have a move that was made over the weekend that, didn't really expect, but maybe can help alleviate some of the depth issues we've had. We'll discuss that next year on the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The NHL is here, and there's no better place to get on the action. The official sports betting partner of the NHL, and that is FanDuel. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to, third period comebacks and all that. Plus, you can combine your bets in the same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making a late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving you customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues here. David Morassutti, and we are now going to close the book on that game against Chicago. We are now going to put our attention forward. And before we do that, though, we had an interesting move come about. Troy Stetcher was claimed off waivers by the Leafs. The Oilers put him on waivers, hoping that maybe they could sneak him down to the AHL. But the Leafs, with the way their season has gone and where they're a little bit lower in the standings, were able to make a waiver claim to grab Stetcher, a player that Brad Treliving is familiar with, spending some time with the Calgary Flames when he was in Calgary. So again, it's another player he's comfortable bringing in. Craig Berube, this is what he had to say about Troy Stetcher. He's a right-hand shot. Key part there. Very competitive player. Been around, got experience, but more than anything, just getting that right-hand shot. So I think it's pretty clear why the Leafs got Troy Stetcher. They needed that right-handed shot. We know Chris Tanev right now. Tough to know. He's been skating on his own. But, a second head neck injury, they're going to really take this one slow with him. They're not going to try to push him to come back, and then something happens and he's off again. Philip Myers has struggled. Dakota Mermis, again, a lefty option. Not really. Like he was, I think, better against the Blackhawks, but not like if I'm going to choose between Troy Stetcher and Dakota Mermis, I'm probably going to take Troy Stetcher. I think there's a couple of things here. He's not a big player. That's one thing that kind of is interesting with this is they didn't go for a player obviously with size. First and foremost, he's free. You don't have to pay anything to get him. So that's, probably the main reason they did this too is the Leafs can take a shot. If it doesn't work, you can waive him. And maybe the Oilers put a claim back on him again, right? But I think they needed just a different mix here. They needed to get another righty in the building. Maybe it takes some pressure off of Myers from playing, more than he needs to. I do think that there's some positives you can look at. I was just watching some film from Stetcher. Looks like a player that's going to be able to move the puck out a bit more, right? I think he hopefully will be one that can win a few more puck battles, skate the puck out, break the puck out, move the puck. That's what they need. They don't need a guy right now that's going to hit everything he sees, because that's not the Leafs defense's problem. Because they're not hitting as much. It's getting the puck out of their zone, breaking the pucks out, so that they're not spending all their time defending, and then everyone gets tired of defending all the time. They need to be able to get this puck out of the zone a bit more. So I'll be curious to see where Stetcher lines up. We'll find out more from practice. As I'm recording this, Leafs have not gone on the ice skating. We'll cover all that on the next show. But I do think that there will be adjustments made still. I think, again, better from the blue line, but still not good enough. Still not good enough. And look, Troy Stetcher is not going to be the answer for a lot of this. Maybe Brandon Carlo will be able to come back and you can get Myers and Stetcher in. And I think that would maybe look a little bit better than having Myers and Murray's. Part of me thinks that would look better, right? But we'll see how that goes. I do think that there is this Leafs team, as bad as it's been, hopefully they can take some of the positives from this game and finally get off the snide, right? 5-game losing streak, not great. I totally get that. But I do think that there's some positives that you can take and hopefully try to just worry about winning one game. Stop thinking about the long term, making the playoffs and all that. Just focus on the next game. That's what they need to do. They need to get some of their guys playing a lot better. I think Nylander, look, you got to find a way to get him going. It wasn't good enough. I liked the way that Waugh looked with Cowan and Nice. So you can probably keep that together for another game because obviously Austin Matthews is on IR. You're not going to see him at least for another few. I think obviously not against St. Louis. And if I'm looking at the schedule right now for this week, I don't know if you're going to see him against the Blue Jackets. We'll see. I think that might be a little early, depending on how we don't know the true nature of the injury. Maybe he targets Saturday against Montreal, but we'll find out hopefully more this week when the Leafs are back on the ice, whether he is back on the ice and just other things the Leafs are going to have to do to get themselves out of this. It's not great right now. I know that everyone's got the whole sky is falling mentality. I get it, but I do think that there's going to have to be a slow progression to build things back up. And we'll discuss that on the next episode of the show. We'll hopefully have some more updates from practice and see how things are going to shake out when they go to take on the St. Louis Blues. But I want to thank you all for listening and for supporting the show. Thank you for making Locked On Leafs your first listen of the day. And make sure you go and check out all of our other shows on the Locked On Podcast Network, especially all the other Locked On NHL shows. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.